This video is sponsored by Knuckles OX, Baba Snake, Julio the Boy, Blazing Darkness G, and Danny Mash X. If you'd like to directly support my content, as well as catch it early, have your name credited as a sponsor, or maybe even have your What If Ideas produce its commissions, consider visiting the links to my Patreon and such in the description below. Our story resumes as Team Guardian is dead, and those who remain have had no choice but to pick up the pieces in their absence. For many, this has been easy, having never heard of the heroes who had saved them from Eggman, Chaos, and Metal SKT. But for those who had known them, who had loved and admired them, it has been the hardest thing in the world. Among those most heavily affected is the aforementioned Chaos himself, who has done his best to honor them by taking up permanent residency on Angel Island as the new guardian of the Master Emerald. Though it has not been easy remaining here, with nothing but the memories of his failure to help in the incident that cost them their lives. Though he cannot take sole blame for that, a fact he morosely reflects on, as the hedgehog who had dragged him from the island appears via warp point. Though this time, Shadow comes as a friend, having made semi-frequent visits in the time since they lost Team Guardian, often to check on Chaos as one who knows all too well the pain of grief, or else just to share reports that might give him hope. Ghost stories of Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles being spotted somewhere in the world, though they are seldom very plausible stories, as the trio are often described as committing crimes, such as kidnapping the Chow Chocola. Nonetheless, every time Shadow investigates, he feels a bit closer to his goal, having vowed that if they're alive, he will find the brothers and bring them home. And he is not the only visitor or member of the search party, as Amy Rose arrives a moment later, with this being their first time seeing each other since the Ark incident, though Chaos at least does not begrudge this, as in the absence of Team Guardian, she and her newly formed Team Rose have done their best to pick up the slack and be the world's heroes. While mostly minor engagements with B-list villains, they have also helped the E-Series brothers to establish a small island colony not far from here, on a floating piece of the fallen Death Egg, and even begun working with Gunn after the organization agreed to exonerate them and Shadow, as well as extend the same posthumous honor to the three Guardians. Knowing that it cannot be a coincidence that the two heroes have arrived on this island at the same time, Chaos looks to the pair to explain, with Amy showing off Eggman's written challenge to stop his next world domination plot, while Shadow explains that he's on his way to meet up with Rouge and investigate a super secret base buried deep underground, with this level of paranoia exceeding even the Doctor's usual extremes. Lighting up, Amy asks if Shadow thinks the Guardian brothers could be imprisoned there, though refusing to get her hopes up without evidence. The ultimate life form sighs that he'll know soon enough, but either way, they'll rendezvous with her and Team Rose later to help put down Eggman's new scheme. With this, the heroes return to their duties, seeing Shadow and Rouge infiltrating the base like the start of the canonical Team Dark story, though this time, the creature in the pod is what appears to be a metal shadow, while in the corner, an E-Series like Gamma and his brothers, but far more advanced, comes to life and opens fire on them, shredding the metal shadow, and forcing the duo of dark heroes to engage, subdue, and calm him, though it seems their ideas of how to do so are rather different, as at first, Shadow simply tries to beat him into submission, though flying between them, Rouge quickly stops the fight and acts as a mediator, learning that the loudmouth red robot ruffian is called E123 Omega, and much more surprisingly, that he hates Eggman as much as they do for sealing him away down here, boasting that this is an unforgivable offense due to his claims to the title of World's Strongest Robot, which in this timeline is exceedingly impressive considering the stiffer competition to canon. Truthfully, neither Rouge nor Shadow understand why Eggman would need a robot to guard another robot, regardless of its power, especially a fake Shadow. Though seeing no reason to look a gift horse in the mouth, the pair invite him to join them, since they're on their way to kick the Doctor's big fat butt. Deeming this acceptable, as it will bring him into lethal proximity with Dr. Eggman, Omega agrees, seeing the birth of the newly formed Team Dark. However, they and Team Rose aren't the only ones about to be drawn into an adventure, as in a small, dingy office, Vector, Charmy, and Espia are hard at work trying to run a profitable detective agency, with trying being the operative word, as even with the help and extra work their old pals Mighty and Ray are giving them and digging up as unpaid part-timers, it's not enough. In fact, the last major gig they had was with Knuckles on Carnival Island, rest his soul, and it's looking like they might have to hang up their hats, unless they find another well-paying customer, since the constant requests they've been doing for Vanilla the Rabbit to find her daughter's lost child pro bono certainly haven't helped the funding issue. That is, until a mysterious contract from an unseen benefactor literally lands in their laps, with the trio not needing deliberation, as if Vector would allow for the size of the dollar signs in his eyes, as once a couple of commas were mentioned, Team Chaotix was already on the case. Meanwhile, in a remote Eggman base, a different set of robots comes online, a trio of Metal Sonic, Metal Knuckles, and Metal Tails copies, though strangely, their programming differs from those of their peers, as their orders are not currently to destroy Team Guardian, but instead to serve as their replacements in their absence, though perhaps they were manufactured to do this too well, as showing a woeful streak more in line with their organic templates rather than their fellow machines. The trio find themselves with emotions, specifically those of feeling insulted interrupted, upset by the insinuation that they should fulfill this role in any other way than defeating Team Guardian and proving the absolute supremacy of robotic life over organics. However, this is not the only way in which they differ from other Eggman robots, as when scanning their memory banks for information on their targets, they find that their data and internal clocks do not align, as their information downloading and storage seems to have stopped around the time of the Little Planet incident. This is unacceptable, with Metal Sonic glowering hatefully at the assembly of Badix as if it is their fault, while placing a steely hand on his brother's shoulder. Metal Knuckles wordlessly suggests that this is a feature, not a bug, as with all their memories, there would be no challenge in squashing the organics. But at this handicap, things might just be entertaining enough to be worth their time and really get their engines started, even if it's still obvious that they will triumph in the end, as assured by Metal Tails, being the walking supercomputer that he was. To this end, Team Metal set out to hunt down and destroy their organic counterparts, with us unknowingly putting them on Seaside Hill, just as Team Rose, Dark, and Chaotix likewise arrive in the same area. Admittedly, Team Rose's road is a slightly longer one, as having picked up some protective elder sibling instincts from Knuckles during their year training together on Little Planet, Amy insists they do just one more quick practice course through the Sea Gate first, just to ensure that Cream is ready for what is to come, as Amy already has faith that the preparation and coaching she has given her friends will allow them to reach their full potentials as she was taught to. She just wants to make sure. And to the Rabbit Girl's credit, she acquits herself excellently, citing that when things get tough, a part of her follows Tails' example as someone her age who proved themselves a hero, while Big also uses this to shake off some of the rust and ensure that he too is now much stronger than he once was, like Knuckles was always going on about, as he needs to be ready to find Froggy, who is allegedly abducted by Team Guardian along with Chocola, even if he doesn't believe his old friends would actually do that. Meanwhile, Shadow is dealing with a very different kind of instinct, as while leading Rouge and Omega towards a steep descent that will no doubt give them an impressive speed boost, he senses something on the edge of his perception and stops, much to the surprise of the Bat, who quips that she wasn't aware still is something that hedgehogs can beat, while the Bot states that their stationary status is ineffective since it is not currently killing Dr. Eggman. Silencing them both with a hand, the ultimate life form makes his way over to the place where he feels a strange presence reminiscent of a Chaos Emerald, but when he draws close, he does not see one of the 7 gems, but instead a cage with a question mark key inside. Wanting a better look at this, as it's almost certainly the source of the disturbance, Shadow tells Omega to smash it, and extrapolating that the cage could have been put there by Dr. Eggman, Omega complies, raining bullets and bombs on the bars and freeing Rouge to swoop in and nab it, though she does teasingly suggest that she might not hand it over, since it is very shiny. Scowling slightly, though knowing her well enough not to rise to the bait, Shadow explains that the energy the key is giving off feels very familiar to him, like someone's chaos energy he knows like the back of his own gloved hand, while revealing that after the Guardians fell, he attempted to follow their example and return the emeralds to Angel Island. However, so far, he's been unsuccessful, and it's theorized for a while now that someone has hidden the gems somewhere even he can't reach, which he begrudgingly admits is impressive. Thus catching on quick, Rouge completes the thought, sighing that he thinks this key has chaos energy residue because it opens wherever the emeralds were stored, like a vault. Clever, but too bad for whoever stored them. There's no vault that she can't crack open. Now the only question is where to find the proverbial vault door, though this is actually the easy part, as when they reach the end of Seaside Hill, the key begins to glow and vibrate, with all 3 members of Team Dark grabbing hold, as they're teleported into a strange space. It looks almost like the interior of an electrical cable. Figuring that must make them the electricity, Shadow races through it, with Omega understanding the dynamic inherently, as it is his lifeblood after all, and following afterwards. Even Rouge tags along, mostly to see if there is a Chaos Emerald in this for her, and she's not disappointed, as at the end of this tunnel rests the green emerald, just as anticipated. Taking a hold of it, Shadow claims the gem in the name of Team Dark, while a moment later, they are returned to where they left off, now up an emerald, and down a key. Looking thoughtful, Shadow muses that these keys must be single-use data constructs, so if they find more, they must be ready to act immediately, or they'll lose their shot at an emerald, while Rouge approaches the problem through the eyes of a jewel thief, calling it a rigid but logical method of security. One in, one out. In truth, she's surprised the Hero Brothers never tried setting up something like that with their chaos powers, since it would have been an extra line of defense and barred Eggman from many of his schemes. Though butting in, Omega calls this deduction illogical, as data on Team Guardian suggests that they intended to use the emeralds for heroics often, not simply to store them, while this method is efficient storage and inefficient utilization. Nodding, Shadow and Rouge concur. Whoever set this up clearly had Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles' instinct to protect the Chaos Emeralds, but none of their philosophy of using their power for the greater good. If anything, the fact that each emerald is stored in individualized vaults rather than all together suggests that whoever did this specifically did not want the stone's power used, either to help others or perhaps against them, with Shadow gravely musing that those may not be mutually exclusive ends, especially if the vault keeper is Eggman. Therefore, they should keep looking for keys and start the 2 of them practicing how to use the emerald's power now, since it may be the secret to stopping whatever the Doctor's scheming. Curiously, Rouge asks if Shadow can go super with just one emerald. Though shaking his head, he admits he wouldn't be able to. But the black and red hedgehog replies that there are other transformations. Case in point, the Guardian brothers Hyper states that they were able to grow powerful enough that they could attain and sustain that form for a short time without the full set. Kinda like when he takes off his inhibitor rings. And something in the way he says this is not purely informative, as for the first time since the fall, true rivalry burns in his eyes. Because if the trio can attain a mastered hyper state, then so can he. Meanwhile, Team Rose, Chaotix, and the robotic duplicates who have dubbed themselves Team Metal have each found a key and had their own experiences racing through the circuit. For their former pair, this had ended in success, and the acquisition of Emeralds 2 and 3, though the androids had not been so fortunate, as the split second it had taken them to process intuitive rather than literal instruction had meant that they had just missed the time limit, and had been teleported back to reality with the emerald in sight, but just out of reach. Though to them, it is no matter, as they will simply find more keys, reattempt, and succeed. For that is the logical response. Though this is not the only shared experience between teams, as having been affected just as deeply by the disappearance of Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, or arguably deeper than Shadow. Amy also proposes trying to unlock a hyperstate for herself and her teammates. Since they're to be the new Team Guardian, they need to be able to live up to their standard, especially now that they have a Chaos Emerald. Though this is not the only thing they have, as once they reach Grand Metropolis, Big goes on a brief shopping trip before returning with a strange assortment of items that he explains will allow him to construct inhibitor rings, like the ones he helped Tails make before they boarded the Ark. While he doesn't remember the details exactly, so they won't be quite as good as the Fox Boys, they should at least help them to get better at innately channeling chaos energy. Beaming that Mr. Big is brilliant, Cream happily volunteers to wear a set once he's done constructing them, while Amy does likewise, praising Big for his craftsmanship, since he is so much smarter than people give him credit for. Wanting to make the most of this, the Pink Hedgehog also begins introducing her friends on how to draw in and harness the energy of chaos to do things that only they can do, using her own experiences with the skill of chaos divination that Knuckles taught her as a base. Since while it's not a full-on transformation, it is a unique application of the power that, if nothing else, may just enlighten her on how to better train her allies or find their missing friends. Thanks to these two advantages, her team makes the best progress, with Amy herself naturally being the first outside of the Guardians to unlock a hyper state, her fur glowing a paler shade of pink, while her hair takes on a more spiky appearance, and her eyes shine a bright, passionate crimson, feeling it only natural and well-earned. In a voice that rings with power, she declares herself a warrior of love, much to the amazement of Cream and Big. While on the other side of the city, Shadow reaches a similar pinnacle of power. However, if she is a warrior of love, then he is one of dark justice, as a malefic bloody aura surrounds the ultimate life form in his hyperstate, with his white chest fur looking similarly ensanguinated. Additionally, his eyes have become pure white, while the most literal manifestation of breaking his limits comes from the removal of his inhibitor rings, as they float around him, leaving him wholly unbound, or at least unbound in terms of power, as even in this state, he does not lose himself to grief and violence as he did previously. The memory of himself, his friends, and his home grounding him, and allowing him to use the power responsibly to guide others, with him remembering something Maria once told him, that she gave him his name because a shadow shows people where to find the light, and with this power, even when everything is consumed by darkness, he can be his own source of light. To this end, he also used this transformation to assist others, as when Team Dark and Team Chaotic clash at the power plant, he does not use his hyper form to dominate or discourage the detectives, instead showing them the true master strength and value of the Chaos Emeralds, and suggesting that if they are truly friends of Knuckles as they say, then they should try to unlock it themselves to honor his memory. Unfortunately, Team Rose's clash in the same spot a short while later is much less amiable, as when they spot Team Metal, they understandably assume that they must be the ones who've been creating all those fake Team Guardian sightings to besmirch the fallen heroes' reputations, and thus are probably the vanguards of Dr. Eggman's world conquest too. Consequently, unlike Shadow, Amy uses this opportunity to test our hyperform in real combat, without holding anything back, and due to this form not being in their incomplete data, not to mention the fact that Cream and Big also help out, even if they are still in the early stages of harnessing chaos energy, this becomes pretty one-sided quickly, with the robots undoubtedly taking a pretty big L. However, before Amy can smash them into scrap with a Hyper Pico Pico Hamp burning brightly with her pink chaos energy, Cream interjects, stating that she doesn't think they're really the bad guys, since when they found them, they weren't hurting anyone like the old Metal Trio did. They were just traveling together like the actual Team Guardian brothers would, which makes her feel like destroying them would be wrong. Taking a moment to consider this, Amy lowers her weapon and asks if this is true, with Metal Tails nodding once with enough sincerity as to remind them all of the real Tails, and thus accept this as the truth and leave the robotic brothers in peace, rather than pieces, as they continue their own mission to track down Eggman. As it turns out, this won't be hard, as the Doctor is quick to confront them on several occasions, all of them in fact, as he appears in various mechs and weapons to do battle with Team Dark, Team Rose, Team Chaotix, and even Team Metal, the last of whom recognize the discrepancies between this foe and the Dr. Robotnik they remember, and so mark him for termination along with Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. Specifically, they notice that each time the battles are short-lived and a bit unsatisfying, as on top of appearing more frequently than in canon, in a way to just a more aggressive bent than usual, like this is scientific analysis rather than actual conflict, followed always by a speedy retreat. Nonetheless, these hit-and-run raids leave all 4 teams with no choice but to follow Dr. Eggman, through bingo boards, haunted castles, frog-infested rainforests, and everything in between. On the bright side, these boss battles do provide plenty of opportunities for the teams to acquire the other 4 keys they need to claim the remaining Chaos Emeralds, as well as for the primarily organic teams to further practice their chaos control, while their inorganic counterparts in Omega draft up methods of upgrades. While each member of the Sonic Heroes cast is now much stronger than they would be in canon, this is not a matter of strength so much as spiritual attunement, and since only Shadow and Amy have the grounding for that mastered balance, thanks to their backgrounds either with the Guardian Bros or Chaos Energy in general, they remain the only ones to manifest hyperforms, though the rest do at least make good progress towards one day attaining the transformation, or at least a Chaos ability someday. Finally, as the promised day of Eggman's conquest of the world arrives, the fate of the heroes converge on the Egg Fleet. As the Grand Armada takes to the sky, all 4 teams make their way on board, their eyes set on the brand new flagship, the Final Fortress. However, before they can bring it down and stop this scrambling scheme in its tracks like so many others, they have to face off with Eggman one last time in his Egg Emperor mech, with this coming down to an intense half-race, half-battle, as they must pursue the mech while avoiding the shockwaves of his lance or its powerful charges. As the only one who had been present on Stardust Speedway, Amy immediately recognizes the similarities, and looking at Team Metal, she asks if this feels like a rematch to them too. Beeping the affirmative, the 3 androids turn their blazing optics upon the Egg Emperor in something resembling suspicion. While being capable of both organic and mechanical speech, Omega translates for them, explaining their observations and mapping it onto the behaviors of an old foe, not Dr. Eggman, as they had thought, but instead, Metal SKT, the dark combined reflection of Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. Having enough of Knuckles' pragmatism to see that deception is pointless at this stage, Dr. Eggman emerges from the mech, his body having become a chrome fluid that shifts and molds to reveal that the heroes are correct. He is in fact Metal SKT, but not as they once knew him. He is now Neo SKT, and has evolved far beyond both his creator, his prior models, and his organic templates. To prove this, he demonstrates his new Lifeform data scan ability, as through his test battles these last few days, he has acquired data on all of them, data which he can not only perfectly analyze and simulate, but evolve to the point of perfection. Case in point, when Vector comes at him with a punch, being one of the more hot-headed heroes, Neo SKT doesn't just copy it flawlessly, he improves it, with the peak form of the very punch that Vector would develop had he been in possession of the endless possibility and potential of an adventure-loving hedgehog, been raised as an echidna warrior with ties to the Master Emerald and his strange energies, and on top of that, been a twin-tailed genius fox with a prodigious 9th level intellect. All this within a body that does not tire or feel pain. This makes for a truly devastating blow, executed with incredible technique and power that is nearly enough to turn the detective into crocodile skin boots, while also sending a chill down the spine of all watching, though it does not deter any of them, including Vector, as they all know it's now or never if they want to save the world. And besides, it'll earn him major points of vanilla if he can save Cream for this thing, with the cranky croc being undeterred and trying every other trick in his book to clobber the tin can. However, his bubblegum, flame breath, and hypersing attacks are also countered and improved just the same, with Big then courageously running in to lend his own strength and fishing rod. However, no matter what lure he tries to use, they are all caught and batted back. As one, seeing some of the strongest amongst them leap into the fray without hesitation, the heroes unite, with SBO and Rouge teaming up to do stealth strikes, Omega leading the Metals into a mechanical melee against their megalomaniacal brother, and Charming and Cream acting as interference, as they fly in and aid their allies in delivering thundershoot attacks, allowing lightning-fast pestering blows before zooming away like this is a game of tag. And at the center of all of it are Hyper Amy and Hyper Shadow, who act as the mantle of power and leadership around which all their allies gather, engaging Neo SKT directly like Team Guardian did. At once, seeing that he's being driven back by those he thought less than the Earth's greatest heroes, Neo SKT's rage and jealousy go into overdrive at the sight of Hyper Hedgehogs backed by allies drawing on the power of chaos control, and so he begins to push himself harder, deactivating safeguard protocols, and evolving their moves back at them faster and with more intensity, whatever it takes, since he's going to crush them with abilities they have no hopes of living long enough to discover themselves. Thus begins a humiliating onslaught as SKT in an instant responds to and recreates every attack thrown at him, generating and immaculately firing his own set of kunai with perfect performance of SBO Shuriken Jutsu in order to nail him while he's invisible, manifesting a stronger torque and mechanical spin to show Rouge what a real screw kick is, unleashing the full capacity and ferocity of his own weapon system against Team Metal and Omega to correct them on who the strongest robot really is, and performing feats of flight mastery through his thrusters and stolen chaos energy that leave Charming and Cream painfully aware of just how dangerous being in a fight like this really can be, before finally beginning to employ his own use of Shadow's Chaos Spear and Amy's Chaos Divination in order to pin his enemies down by firing a volley of energy blasts and perfectly predicting where they will hide and scurry for cover. Though recognizing this tactical error, as such a move can't be maintained forever, Shadow issues commands to their allies to capitalize on the openings the bot is creating, as he pauses the scan and then implement their own biodata, while at the same time, Amy, seeing the emotional fault lines and convictions of those on the battlefield, tells the others how to widen them and create more errors for SKT and motivations for themselves, specifically by evoking their lost friends and individual goals, thus creating a chemical reaction of their own emotions, skills, weapons, and abilities that make a formula for snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. By synthesizing these ideas, the heroes are able to push the android over the edge, so that in the end, it is not strength or chaos powers that defeat Neo SKT, but Neo SKT himself, as due to their working together so well, they may as well be a second Neo SKT on the battlefield, and thus, the original leaves himself open once Shadow uses Chaos Control to position Neo SKT perfectly so someone else can land the finishing blow, setting the big bad boss up from a final Hyper Pico hammer from Amy that reduces him to a puddle of that same metallic slime, from which emerge Chocola and Froggy. And so it seems the battle is over, with Big, who had been tending to Vector, running over to hug his friend, as he reveals that the crocodile told him something very interesting. He's suspected for a while now that their client is Dr. Eggman, or rather, the real doctor, a claim that intrigues Rouge, as she states that she thinks it's about time they get some truth out of the mustachioed mad scientist. As one, the four teams descend upon the room where Eggman is being held, and seeing that his rescuers include some of his worst enemies, none of whom seem particularly happy to see him, he begins scrambling for an explanation about how Metal SKT evolved and overthrew him, though when Shadow snarls that this is self-evident, and he'll need to give them something better, the Doctor pulls up his last trump card. Team Guardian are alive, and he can take the heroes to them. As he had hoped, this lands perfectly, as Amy, Rouge, and Cream in particular implore him to reunite them with their lost friends, while Shadow initially is cautious, knowing what false hope would do to their morale now. However, upon hearing Eggman assure that he would never joke about something like this, or accept this form of victory over his greatest enemies, the Dark Hedgehog agrees as well, and seeing the chance to save his own skin, Eggman complies, officially taking over this rescue operation as his own, and taking the group deeper into the final fortress, where canonically the rows of Shadow androids would be, but here instead would lie only 3 suspended animation pods, one containing Sonic, one containing Knuckles, and the last containing Tails. In a voice laced with false penitence, Eggman explains that he found them after their fall, and brought them here so he could heal them, as he did after all owe them for saving the world from the final hazard, so that he may one day conquer it for his Eggman Empire. Though when it becomes clear that no one is buying either his benevolence or his enduring evil schemes, he blusters fine. He brought them here so he could use their data to upgrade SKT and take over the world. Unfortunately, it was exactly this upgrade that convinced the Amalgam bot that he didn't need him anymore, so he imprisoned him, took over the Empire, and planned to execute Dr. Eggman and the 3 Guardians once he had conquered the world in the name of Machine Khan. Buying this self-serving motive a lot more, the heroes don't bother to argue, instead rushing in to free their friends, with Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles stumbling out of the pods in a state of disorientation. For a moment, it seems as though the trio have contracted amnesia from their fall, though this passes as they look at each other, and their brotherly bond pretty instantly brings their memories back to the surface, like a resonating jolt of chaos energy. Naturally, everyone is delighted to have them back, with Amy throwing her arms around the brothers, while others rush in to welcome them back as well, all except Eggman, who huffs that he thinks he deserves some credit for fixing their broken bodies like he claimed, to which Knuckles retorts that they'll pay him back by giving him a head start, his spike fists slamming together, while Sonic amends a small one. Only Tails doesn't engage in this verbal sparring with the Doctor, instead listening intently as his friends recount their adventures to save them, before asking the prescient question of whether anyone confirmed that Metal SKT is actually dead. At once, the final fortress shudders, and running out onto the deck, everyone is met by a horrifying sight, a reformed Neo SKT, who has assimilated the airship into himself to become the monstrous Metal Overlord. Not only does this provide him with a massive boost in power, but it also gives SKT direct control over the final fortress's considerable armory, as turning his now vertical eyes upon his enemies, namely the liberated Team Guardian. He roars out his intent to end them all, and then opens fire with every cannon aboard the ship, wisely forming a chaos shield to try and block some of this salvo. Knuckles orders everyone to scatter, with Shadow agreeing, as he suggests that Team Dark and Team Rose can handle destroying the turrets, while Team Chaotix are annoying enough that they might be able to keep Metal Overlord's attention long enough for Team Guardian to prepare to mount a counteroffensive. Balking a little at this, Charming protests that they're not annoying, they're fun. Though more stoically, Espio gratefully accepts the assignment, as one of a ninja's roles is diversionary tactics. While looking to him as de facto co-lead of this rescue mission, Amy asks Shadow what kind of counteroffensive he's proposing, to which the black and red hedgehog replies that the only kind that will stop this threat for sure, super transformations. Recognizing the plural, Tails protests that they've never tried multiple people going super before, only hyper. Though placing a hand on each brother's shoulders, Sonic grins that he knows they each have it in them, since they can't save the world without each other. Nodding resolutely, Tails and Knuckles then link hands with Sonic, while Team Chaotix, Dark, and Rose lay the emeralds they have collected at the hero's feet. As a moment later, Team Metal completes the set, much to the surprise of everyone, who had expected them to turn against them and flee with Eggman at the first opportunity. This is not lost on Sonic, who who grins that if they're sticking around, the three of them could use their help too, since SKT is their faker as much as he is Team Guardians. Beeping in the affirmative, the robotic doppelgangers take up a position facing their templates. Then as the Chaos Emeralds begin to float and circle around the Guardians, golden energy blooms. However, it is not just on them, as thanks to putting time into channeling their hyperforms, and the ability of the Guardians to control and channel the excess chaos energy flooding into them, everyone is able to draw on and share this power, even if for most, it is simply a golden orb of light that surrounds and protects them, while temporarily allowing them to reach their hyper potential. For Shadow and Amy, this is a reawakening of their hyperstates, while the metals gain an incomplete golden aura akin to the one Metal Sonic would canonically receive when he absorbed the Chaos Emeralds in the Mania shorts. And at the heart of it all, float three golden champions, Super Sonic, Super Tails, and Super Knuckles. As their eyes fall on their empowered friends, Sonic grins that it's time to show the Metal Overlord what they're made of. At the sight of this, Metal Overlord demands to know how dare they use the emeralds in this way, claiming he's the true Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, the true Guardian, though this only earns a smirk from Rouge, who tells her teammates that she thinks she found their Vault Key, while showing himself as the true sass king of this world. Charmy retorts that the only thing he is a true pain in the butt. With this, the attack begins in earnest, with each team breaking off to do their job, as streaks of gold race along the robot dragon's hide too quick for even the advanced processor of Metal Overlord to follow, especially with Team Chaotix buzzing in and out of his field of vision, and crossing past the other teams to make it even harder to tell who is who. This allows Team Guardian and Team Metal to get in close and strike at the monster's head, with Knuckles once again manifesting his Chaos arm to grab the Overlord around the jaw, while Tails temporarily overloads his optic circuits with a burst of Chaos Lightning, so that Sonic can lead the robotic trio in a quadruple homing attack that would have finished off the final hazard at one blow if they were fighting it. However, this is no failed prototype. This is the ultimate mechanical life form. A claim Metal Overlord makes as he breaks free of Knuckles' hold by manifesting a giant robotic arm of his own to punch the echidna, before firing a barrage of horn-like missiles from his back in an attempt to atomize these insects. However, this is where Team Dark and Rose come in, flying between the missiles and knocking them off course into each other, while crying their support for the Guardians and Metals to keep up the pressure. Flashing them a thumbs up, Sonic falls in with Metal Sonic to make another run at Metal Overlord's big head, though here, the robot hand becomes an issue, grabbing them both with speed from the part of him that is Sonic, and beginning to crush the life out of them. That is, until Knuckles and Metal Knuckles come to the rescue, syncing up their punches to plow through the giant's wrist, having been directed there by Tails and his own robot copy, who had identified it as the arm's structural weak point. This frees up the two Sonics to resume their assault, showing similar synchronicity to the Knuckleses as they perform a joint homing attack that makes the Metal Overlord snarl with frustration. However, the mechanical monster is not out of tricks. Far from it, as powering up an orb in his chest, he begins firing crystalline lasers, each of which is large and powerful enough to swallow up an entire team whole, forcing the heroes back onto the evasive, as they adopt an arrowhead formation with Tails at their head, as he attempts to analyze this laser for a weakness. This does unfortunately mean letting Metal Overlord fire on them again though, but trusting Tails' strategy, Sonic and Knuckles obey, drawing the dragon's aggro and allowing Tails to watch him carefully. Then, when he believes he has what he needs, he asks the Metals to join him in a bombing run, as he swoops low and overloads the laser with more Chaos Light, while with perfect coordination, the other heroes strike it one after another, all in rapid succession, until the green gem cracks and becomes unusable. This is yet another blow to the robotic conqueror, a fact his foes can see by the erraticness with which he chooses and enacts his next attack, throwing airships from the Egg Fleet at them, while spouting declarations of being the ultimate overlord, and the world's most supreme being. Recognizing this is little more than a child throwing their toys, the two groups representing Team Sonic in this story prepare to enter the endgame, with Sonic telling his brothers to form up on him, while Metal Sonic gestures for his to do the same. As one, the two trios make matching triangle formations in midair, with Metal Overlord bellowing triumphantly, as these fools have just made themselves a series of stationary targets, with him hurling yet another ship at them, confident it will crush them into oblivion, though this is a mistake, and the last mistake he will ever make, as the purpose of this formation was not to lie down and die, but to align, reaching perfect harmony between speed, power, and flight, and complete trust in the other two warriors of the triangle to carry out their role, as the other Sonic heroes follow their lead and race off behind them. Then, when they have all found purchase for their final attacks, they strike, moving without need for conscious coordination as they split apart and whirl around Metal Overlord's massive body, landing blows and flying away in seemingly untraceable patterns, and a rainbow of chaos energy that intersect with each other but never collide. It is a gossamer balance that amongst anyone else would break in an instant, but when upheld and set as a standard by the Brotherhood of the Guardians and their metal counterparts, it is exactly the power they need to strike every core system of Metal Overlord simultaneously, dismantling and bringing an end to him in fantastic fashion. As this happens, the dragon melts once more into a chromatic fluid, losing its grip upon the final fortress and reforming on the deck, not as Neo SKT, but simply Metal SKT once more. As this happens, the hero all land around him, their super and hyper states having ended, as they question what to do with their foe. Stepping forward, Metal Sonic, Metal Knuckles, and Metal Tails were out something that no one needs Omega's translation to understand, that while they originally sought to destroy SKT, as they did Team Guardian, they have grown tired of battle, and proven themselves in all ways that matter, at least all ways that their data is currently aware of. So now, they will take this wayward brother into their custody if the organics will allow it. Seeing no reason to refuse confused when Team Metal were as essential to saving the world as anyone else. The heroes entrust SKT to them, with Amy even offering to help them settle with Gamma and his brothers on Scrapnik Island. Taking this as a cue to celebrate, everyone lets out a cheer that they did it, as they break off from their assigned teams to begin congratulating each other and debriefing on how well everyone did against Metal Overlord. In particular, Team Metal and Team Guardian are commended for their leading the finishing blow, with Sonic grinning that he caused that move the superpower of Sonic heroes, until Knuckles lightly clonks him on the head, grunting that shouldn't it be the superpower of Guardian heroes, since they all contributed equally, while Metal Sonic warbled something that tells it just might be the robot's bid to have it be dubbed the superpower of Metal heroes instead, at least if he really is as similar to his template as he seems. Letting out a laugh, Sonic gripes that his brothers never let him have any fun, while throwing an arm around each of them and pulling them into a hug that they are quick to reciprocate, as this is their first chance to truly feel their sacrifice back on Ark, and just how close they came to losing each other. Recognizing this on some level, the others leave them be, beginning to go their separate ways, as Team Rose intends to make good on their offer to Team Metal and SKT. Team Chaotix need to track down Dr. Eggman, who somehow slipped away in the chaos, while working with and piloting Omega to obtain his Giga form, since he still owes them a lot of money. And Team Dark want to investigate the contents of the ship, with Rouge looking for valuables she can swipe, and Omega craving Eggman robots he can destroy using his newly upgraded power. However, unlike their last party, everyone knows that this is not a final goodbye, but merely a see you later, until the next adventure arrives, as the world finally has its strongest heroes back, its greatest guardians. But this is where we'll be leaving our story off for right now.